In this episode, we are kicking off 90s November by taking a look at some forgotten 90s fantasy toys. So, stick around. Hello, fellow dorks and dorkettes, and welcome to Nostalgia Syndrome. My name is Rob, and in this episode, like I said, we are kicking off 90s November by taking a look at some forgotten 90s fantasy toys. So, without further ado, let's get to number one. Our first fantasy toy is one that is heavily inspired by a literary hero. One that has graced TV screens and movie screens for many, many, many decades. But they're scared to use his name. This is Masked Bandit, released by Chat May in 1996. Now, I know you're probably asking yourself, does this coincide with the release of The Mask of Zorro, which was a blockbuster hit? No, that movie was released in 1998, so this comes 2 years before that movie. What was the reason for this inspiration, this ripoff? Who knows? But either way, this is The Masked Bandit. Now, there were 2 figures released of The Masked Bandit. One is your typical black, and the other is a green and red clad Masked Bandit. They come with various swords and other accessories and capes. Now, a third one was released in this roleplay set. In this set, you got the mask, so you could be the Masked Bandit. You got a saber. You got a flintlock pistol with 3 darts and version of the Masked Bandit action figure. Yes, this is a heavily inspired toy line. It's kind of odd, like I said, that this wasn't even attached to the Mask of Zorro movie, because that came a couple years later. So they were just doing a inspired toy line just for the sake of doing it. And yeah, the thing that still shocks me about this is you can find these out on the secondary market, and they actually go for a little bit more than I anticipated. So that was a real big surprise. So anyway, if you want to score yourself a Masked Bandit toy, they're definitely out there. So good luck hunting it down. For those of you that didn't live through the 90s, there was a huge Hercules boom. And I mean, he was found in Disney's Hercules on the big screen, on television screens, and you had a syndicated television show, Hercules, the live-action adventures. Nothing in common with the Disney one at all. Anyway, Hinstar released a Hercules collection called the Saga of Hercules in 1996. Now, there were only 2 figures released, both being Hercules. One, he has a headband and the lion shield, and various weapons and accessories. The second one, minus headband, has a black with silver X or cross shield, and has various weapons and accessories that are different than the first one. Now, this is done in the body stylings of a Masters of the Universe figure, and they almost look like, because of how clean and cartoony they look, that they're trying to capitalize on that middle ground between the Disney cartoon and the live action TV show. That's just my interpretation of it. They tried to go right down the middle and create a Hercules figure that would be easily recognizable to little kids and equally recognizable to the ones that watched the syndicated show. Now, again, big surprise. This on the secondary market goes for a pretty high price, in my opinion, for what this is. I mean, they're out there, and yeah, they're demanding a higher price tag than I could have ever imagined. Our third fantasy toy is another release from Hinstar. This time, it is Legend of Warrior. And yes, I said that correctly, Legend of Warrior. Now, there were actually 2 figures released in this toy line, so they could have made Warrior plural. I mean, there were technically warriors. But anyway, like I said, there were 2 figures released in this toy line, and they both featured the exact same lion-headed shield, except one came with long swords, one came with scimitars. Now, the one that came with the scimitars definitely has a Middle Eastern vibe to his outfit. The other just looks like your happy-go-lucky normal warrior type. Now, again, these are done in the body stylings of Masters of the Universe. And I feel like I'm going to say this quite a lot this episode, but out on the secondary market, these dudes go for a pretty high price for what they are. Now, there's got to be people out there collecting these, and, you know, God bless you, because if I had the money, I would probably get these just for the whole novelty of it, add them into my Masters of the Universe, Playtime universe, what have you. But I just find it shocking, and I'm sorry I keep saying that, but I expect these inspired toy lines not to get a lot of traction, but they definitely do, and there's definitely people out there that collect them, so I think that's awesome. Just shocking, but awesome. Our fourth Forgotten 90s fantasy toy is definitely one that piqued my interest, just because it's 3 3/4 scale, and yeah, I always like getting that sized figure to add to my G.I. Joe Playtime universe. But anyway, these are Legends of Knights and Dragons, released by Imperial in 1992. Now, not to spoil anything, but there's no dragons in this toy line whatsoever. There's definitely knights, so I will give them that. Now, of course, Imperial is famous for their awesome dragon toys, so maybe their intention was for you to bring those dragons over into this toy line. I would assume that's the case, I mean, at least in my thought process. But anyway, the knights are all based on Arthurian legend. We have King Arthur, Merlin, Sir Galahad, Sir Gawain, Sir Lancelot, and Sir Tristan of Lyonesse. So, what these figures lack in posability, I mean, I think they're just awesome for being just basic little knight figures. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. They also sold these exact figures in a 2-pack with a horse. So, there were separate horses for each of the knights, even Merlin. And you could also purchase the horses separately. So there were 3 ways to score this toy line: single figures, carded 2-pack, or single horses. The horses, I think, are a pretty cool addition to your 3 3/4 collection, because there weren't a lot of horses released for 3 3/4 inch figures. So these would fit the bill and allow you to, you know, have a desert adventure with your G.I. Joes as they go across the burning sands on horseback. I don't know, just something that popped into my mind. But anyway, these on the secondary market start at a very fair price and skyrocket from there. Now, I'm not going to say I'm surprised about this one because these are pretty cool, and I can see that people would probably want to collect these. But that could just be my personal bias. Yeah, we'll just say that. I admit it. I'm biased because I actually think these are awesome, and if I had the money, I'd definitely pay that price. For our fifth and final forgotten 90s fantasy toy, we're hitting the high seas. These are Pirates of the Evil Seas, released by Remco in 1991. And I am super happy to be able to include Remco in a list other than an 80s themed one. I mean, Remco, definitely one of my favorite toy lines of all time. But I guess that comes from being poor and being able to afford the cheapest action figures at Kmart at the time. But anyway, the Pirates of the Evil Seas, there were 6 figures in total, 3 3/4 scale, and done in the style of G.I. Joe. So these are O-ring figures, and these are awesome. These would definitely be a welcomed addition to any G.I. Joe collection. I mean, you had a dude with a peg leg, super awesome, and completely different styling than any of the other O-ring figures at the time. Now, these pirates were based on real pirates at the time. You have Blackbeard, Calico Jack Rackman, Captain Kidd, Henry Morgan, that comes with a removable tricorder hat, awesome. You also had Long John, Silver I assume, who also had a removable hat, and the mentioned Peg Leg. Probably not based on any real pirate at the time, just Peg Leg. But anyway, you could get these each as a single carded figure or get them in 3 packs. I loved that about Remco at that time period. I mean, you could have an instant collection just like that by getting a 3-pack. I mean, they did it with like their American Defense lines and things like that also. Now, as usual, anything that I seem to like, everyone else likes as well, and that drives the price up drastically. On the secondary market, these go for an astounding $350 still in package. But if you want a loose single, it's a pretty fair price, and I definitely would love to hunt these down. And you know, I don't care if they're loose in singles, loose 3-pack, what have you. I definitely want to get these in my collection. Okay folks, that was a look at 5 forgotten 90s fantasy toys. And we had everything from the drastically inspired to the drastically awesome, and everything in between. I mean, yes, you could say that a body styling calls to call it a ripoff, but I don't. I just see that as a sign of the times to what works. And I will never beef with any toy line just for using the same body stylings like Masters of the Universe or G.I. Joe's O-ring stylings to produce something truly imaginative and different, like Pirates of the Evil Seas. Yeah, I'm totally smitten with that toy line and just completely bummed that it's so expensive out there in the open market. But I'll just keep chipping away and see what I find over time. But anyway, enough of all that. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. If you got something to say, please leave a comment. I love reading them, and I love getting back to everyone. And if you're new around here and you enjoyed this or any of the other episodes that YouTube is recommending down here, please hit subscribe. And if you hit that little bell icon, you'll be notified whenever there's new episodes. So anyway, until next time, thanks for watching. Keep being rad and stay dorky.